right, thank you, Mrs. Ford, for queuing me up there. My name is Robert Smith. I'm the town manager, Town of Windermere. This is the Lake Street Park public input sessions. The purpose of these sessions is to gain some input and understand some of the issues that some of the adjacent neighbors have been experiencing from Lake Down and Lake Street parks, and to gather information and present it to Parks and Recreation Committee and then also Town Council. We did similar workshops for the Southeast Quadrant from 6th Avenue South and Main Street East to talk about the traffic issues that they're experiencing. We held probably about 5 public hearings and came up with some ideas that are going to be presented to Town Council at the next meeting next Tuesday. So tonight is just an open forum, is not a formal Town Council meeting. That's why we're not following the decorum, meaning that we're not restricting any of your questions to a certain amount of time. So we're here to provide any input that we can relative to some of the issues that you're experiencing. Now, we notified everybody within about 500 feet, I believe, of the Lake Street and Lake Down parks with the door knockers, and we also advertised it on our Facebook, social media pages, so on and so forth. But again, this is just the first public input workshop. We did receive a lot of emails relative to this issue, and we did submit those to Town Council. I'm going to be the administrator and the moderator of this discussion, so please bear with me because I'm having to do several things at once. As you can see, we have tonight is the first public input workshop. We have one on July 13th, and then Parks and Recreation will be meeting on July 14th. I believe Town Council will be meeting on July 26th or 28th. I have that at the very end of the presentation, and then a subsequent meeting in August. So, but if I can't have everybody mute until the presentation is over, we do have several council members on the meeting tonight. We have Council Member Manny David. We have Council Member Martini. We have Councilmember Rose and Councilmember Williams on tonight, and we do have several members of the Parks and Recreation Committee on as well. But again, today is just to get some input and have some discussions on some of the issues and how to possibly come up with some solutions for those issues. And hopefully everybody can see the PowerPoint that I have tonight. And then again, just to be a quick PowerPoint, but it's going to discuss some of the things that we've seen, some of the things that we've heard, and hopefully start some of the discussion points as we move along. So over the year, sorry about that. Over the years, again, Lake Street and Lake Down parks have become increasingly popular with both town and non-town residents. With the increase in popularity comes the increase in unruly behavior. Neighbors and police have witnessed an increase in drinking, drug use, noise, and other complaints. Neighbors now fear retribution should they contact the police. So we are continuing the dialogue with the adjacent neighbors as well as the community as a whole in order to identify the issues and to discuss possible solutions. And that's pretty much the purpose of this meeting. So the area that we're looking at, again, everybody's familiar with it. It goes from Lake Street all the way up to 5th Avenue. And then you can see where we have some of the improvements over here on 4th, and then over on Lake Street as well, where we have the 2 docks, one with a roof and one without a roof. Here's a video that was submitted by one of the residents. Hopefully you'll all be able to see this. It just shows just a snippet of, I believe, what some of the adjacent property owners have been dealing with. Let me know if y'all can hear this and see this.
We can see it, Robert.
Thank you.
I can see it. I cannot hear it though.
Can't hear it.
We can see it.
This is just a visual of some of the issues that we're having at the park now. You know, it is a public park, so it can be used by all residents, including non-residents. But again, that's what we're here to discuss tonight. You know, these parks used to be quaint parks. They used to be just parks that used to take your families for picnics and or a little swimming. But they've just gained in popularity over the years, similar to what we've seen over at Fernwood and Egret Island. So what has the town been doing since we not only first learned about this issue, but since we've received some complaints, since we've seen some of the increased activity, we increased signage over at the parks. We've installed security cameras at both locations. We've actually installed cameras at several locations. We've increased patrols at the area. We typically receive money from the Butler Chain of Lakes Advisory Committee for off-duty police officers, and we've been utilizing that off-duty for not only patrolling this park, but the Lake Down and Lake Street parks. We added some additional fencing to delineate where people can not park or where people can and cannot go. We're also working with Orange County, similar to what we did with the Egret Island, Bird Island situation, and I'll get more into that later on. And then we passed more strict ordinances, which gives us more tools for law enforcement to utilize when it comes to a citation process or a civil infraction. So here you can see a lot of the signage that we've added onto this is Lake Street Park. Versus no climbing, no jumping, where we did a climbing barrier that we installed to try to deter some of the people climbing onto the roof. We added, again, more and more signage, letting people know because we can't be out there 24/7. You can see right here on the right-hand side, one of the cameras that we installed, additional signage that we have out there. You can see some of the barriers and some of the things that we've been trying to do to get the word out there that, not everything everybody's out there doing is appropriate and or welcomed. And as you can see, the signs are working very, very well. This is another picture that was submitted by one of the residents, and you can see when you're a teenager and or a little bit older, you are very determined, as well as your friends, in order to take risks. And this has been one of the issues that we've been having to deal with for quite some time, is people jumping off the roof. So again, getting into the security cameras, this year the town made a significant investment in adding additional security cameras. Or security at the parks. Cameras were installed at Fernwood, Windermere Recreation Center, Lake Street, and Lake Down parks. The cameras include cell phone applications, which can be used by law enforcement to monitor and respond if needed. These devices have already been used in resolving minor crimes and trespassing individuals. Yeah, you can raise your hand and whatnot, but please keep all the questions for the after the presentation. So maybe I'll address some of your questions through the presentation itself. And the cameras also include license plate readers, so we can trespass people after the fact. And this has been used again already. One of the things that we had somebody utilizing Lake Street Park for a drop off for a boat. They utilized a John boat. One second. Again, having a dual role is always fun because I have to let people into the meeting as well as presenting at the same time. All right, again, if you can mute. So on the left-hand side, it shows what the app allows us to view. All the officers have this downloaded onto their phones. In addition to that, I have it on my phone, as well as I believe some of the council members and public works. So at any moment in time, we can pull up the camera and check and see who's out there, what they're doing. And on the right-hand side, again, you can see what the cameras look like, and they do have the license plate readers. And as I said before, we've used it to solve, minor crimes as well as trespass individuals over at the parks. So one of the things that we're working with Orange County, Florida Wildlife Commission, Orange County Sheriff's Office, Orange County EPD, and the Butler Chain of Lakes Advisory Committee. If you're not familiar with it, with Bird Island, what they did was they created a swim zone and a no motorized watercraft zone on the northwest, I would say, portion of the island, pretty much where a lot of people congregate and trespass onto the island. And that was done, again, collectively with various jurisdictions. We had a lot of stakeholder meetings. And the reason why that ordinance took so long is once we started approaching that subject as far as trying to control some of the behaviors and some of the issues that are related to people congregating, gathering, especially when it comes to an environmentally sensitive area. Orange County identified several other locations, and it just started to pile on each other. So we were able to segregate that issue from the others, and some additional ordinance changes that need to be done with Orange County's boating and safety ordinance. And we're able to advocate and assist in the passage of that egret island / fur island protection zone. So you have a swim area, and you also have additional protections out there for a no motorized watercraft being within that certain area. So we've done the same with the Lake Street and Lake Down area. Now, this is not going to impact or negatively impact anybody that has any boat docks out there. And I'll get into the Lake Street, Lake Down lawsuits that were resolved through a settlement agreement in the past. But this is mostly going to be focused on the 2 or 3 areas that we currently have where people are congregating, people are bringing jet skis in, and people are mooring up some of their boats and whatnot into those areas. So if we can create those zones. In the past, we did have a swim area, but that was not a legal swim area. And the reason that was removed was we had an individual go to the Butler Channel Lakes Advisory Committee wanting to add a buoy to that swim area. And that then notified Orange County EPD that we had an illegal swim area. And in order to establish a swim area, you have to go through a myriad of jurisdictions in order to gain approval, even the state of Florida, FWC, Orange County, so on and so forth. So that's why that swim area was removed at that time. We were under a consent order, which means a code enforcement, and we're looking at a fine of about $10,000 a day if we did not remove that swim area and or those buoys. But this, as far as the boating safety ordinance revisions, is going to take quite some time. We have to gather the data. We already have a repository of some of the issues that we've seen in this zone area. So if you have any issues, complaints, and have any pictures, videos, whatnot, please continue to send those to us, and we go ahead and put them into our F drive, and we make sure that when this comes back up, especially with the stakeholders meetings, we can present that information to Orange County and FWC OCSO for them to use in order for us to enhance our argument on adding these additional tools for law enforcement. Now, we don't want to create a false sense of hope saying, okay, once these things or if these things are established to the ordinances that, it's all going to go away. Because if you look at FWC and OCSO, they have a large area that they have to cover, and they don't have the staff to cover all those areas at one time, especially on this portion of the lake system. So, they will have those tools, we'll have those tools, but, it's not going to be the end all cure all for some of the issues that we're seeing out there. So enforcement, what we've done, again, we've passed more strict ordinances relating to commercial activities on town property, as well as additional citation processes for civil infractions. Jumping off the dock, we have parking. You're not allowed to utilize the boat docks again for commercial activities, meaning that you can't pick people up. You can't rent pontoon boats from those facilities. And, one of the things that we could talk about tonight too, that gives another added tool for law enforcement is the town can now consider banning smoking and vaping at parks, which, will add an additional enforcement tool for law enforcement. Again, each one of these little minor things that we pass gives us more teeth and more weight for us to go ahead and do hopefully curtail some of the activities that are ongoing out there. And of course, we've always increased patrols when we're out there. And again, if you have your hand raised, I'll be more than happy to call on you after the presentation is completed. But please understand, with every interaction that law enforcement has, it can be positive and or negative. So we want to make sure that we have good enforcement, positive enforcement, and enhance the community policing that we currently have. So a lot of people have brought this subject matter up too, as far as, well, let's buy back the parks. And what do they mean by buy back the parks? In fiscal year 2007, not 207, and 2008, the town was awarded a FERDAP grant. It's a Florida Recreational Assistance Grant Program, for the amount of $112,500 for the improvements, which included both Lake Street and Lake Town parks. So one of the things that people have been requesting is, well, can't we just make these a resident-only park? When you receive funds from the state, you have to make sure that these parks or wherever you utilize these FERDAP funds are open to the general public, meaning that you cannot restrict access to those. This was actually one of the things that was brought up when we were looking at FERDAP funds for Fernwood Park, that if we were to utilize those monies at that location, we would have to open up the boat ramp to the general public. So we didn't want to do that. So we made sure that we didn't accept those funds. But you're able to repay those funds, but you have to do with an interest over the term that you've benefited from that FERDAP grant. So if we were to look at the possibility of making a resident-only park, then we would have to pay back those funds. That would be at around $130,000, $140,000 in today's dollars. Will that prevent you from applying for future FERDAP funds? No, it will not. Because again, you can still use it maybe at Central Park, Palmer Park, areas that you may need that assistance from the state to help fund some amenities. But if you again utilize those funds at a certain park, then you open it up for the general public. And one thing I didn't add in the slideshow, but it's something I will mention. When I forget what year it was, but some time ago, there was a lawsuit that was brought on by the residents that were adjacent to Lake Street. And I'm going to skip up here again. So this is actually an old right-of-way when it was platted. So the neighbors that are adjacent to this old platted right-of-way, what they wanted to do was acquire that property for themselves, and pretty much trying to require the town to vacate. And I'm just trying to summarize the actual litigation, stating that the town vacated this property and it's actually the property that should be owned by the adjacent property owners. So what came out of it was a court order that stated that no, it is the town's property, and the town agreed to allow for certain things to occur on this area. One of those things is that, you know, the adjacent property owners are allowed to put a boat dock on what looks like is connected to their property, but actually is not. And it would be open for public recreation. We can get into the minutia of what is public recreation, but in the actual settlement agreement, it does state, the court order, it does state that you can do swimming, fishing, walking, so on and so forth. Now it's mostly intended for a walking trail, but again, people can swim, so on and so forth. But that is something that has come up in the past and will come up if we are to look at making any adjustments. I don't think anybody is advocating to close the parks for everybody. I think it is just, you know, making it, people are advocating to make it a resident-only park. And then we would have to pretty much research, well, how does that impact that court order? So getting back to some of the things that we have been doing, and these are some of the things that we can discuss tonight as far as, you know, trying to get the dialogue going. I know that some of these things have been brought up in the past as well. So what would the town have to do to make this a private park, meaning that it's just for residents only? Well, the first thing we would have to do is repay the FERDAP grant, which is about $130,000, $140,000. And then we would have to change the comprehensive plan and zoning of that to make it a resident-only park. It is a small-scale land use amendment. It really isn't anything that is too cumbersome to do. And it just takes a few public hearings and some ordinance revisions, and then sending it to Department of Economic Opportunity. So that's really not a difficult process to go through. We did it with Fernwood Park, but we actually made that a boat ramp and not a private resident-only park. If we are to make it a resident-only park, then we have other things that we need to discuss too. Do we fence it? Do we gate it? We're looking at right now, we just did a quick estimate of how much it would cost. Again, the cost is not a huge cost. It would be between $25,000 and $30,000 for us to put in a fencing and gating system, and the gating system would be similar to what we're going to be doing at Fernwood, which would be each resident or each household would get a number specific to that household. So you would come to the town, get that number, and then you can use that when you type in and gain access to the park itself. Now, again, logistical issues are that means that we have over 1,600 parcels to where people are going to have to come in. They're going to have to get that code, and we have to validate the person's residency. And then if somebody were to give out their code to somebody else, again, that's where the camera systems help us out, because it has helped us out at Fernwood Park with people selling their keys or giving their keys out. So our intent would be, okay, well then, your keypad is revoked for a year. And then we have to look at, okay, well, how many people are going to be allowed at the parks and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of logistics that go into it, but that's something that we can discuss as we move further in. Restricting parking and park entrance points, that has been discussed in the past and something that we can discuss tonight. But as I said before, we could look at the gating system, so we can maybe do some trespassing and or revoking resident access to it via the gate code system. But again, it's just a logistical issue for the town because we have such a small staff and a lot of residents. People have discussed creating a swim area, but then you have to balance out, okay, if you create a swim area, does that attract more people to it? But if you create a resident only area and then create a swim area, then that restricts it too as far as the access. But then you have, again, looking at, okay, well, how do you restrict it from the lake coming into that area? And how do you do that? So does this create more of an attraction? And then permitting a swim area, it would also take some time, just like when we did with Orange County with the Egret Island, Burr Island situation. Some people have suggested removing the structures. They call them attractive nuisances, meaning that, if you remove the roof off of one of the docks, will that prevent them from jumping off of? Yes, of course it will, prevent them from jumping off of it, but will it, stop people from congregating at those areas? And the same thing has to do with the other docks. Amending the times of the park access. Right now it's dusk to dawn. So do you restrict it even more? And also, do you restrict the amount of people that can be at the parks at one time in those certain areas? So again, just like with the traffic issue, this isn't something that was created by the town as far as a pain point. This is something that we're having to react to. And it's never an easy issue. It's how much pain and or more restrictions do you want to place upon yourselves as residents to resolve a problem that is not one that is created by the residents themselves. So that's why we're here tonight to discuss, and that's why we want to hear from you as far as, what have you seen, what have you heard, and what are some of your suggestions that we could research, take a look at, and take it to Parks and Recreation, take it to Town Council, and see if there's that either a measured approach or if there is another approach that we haven't heard about that we can again take a look at and create a presentation for those respective bodies. So at this time, if you want to type your name in the chat box and or raise your little icon hand through the Zoom, I'll call on you. You can ask your question. Again, we have all of the council members here. Mayor O'Brien's out of the country right now, so he's unable to attend tonight, but we do have our Public Works Director, Tanya Elliott Moore, as well as Sergeant Jason Bonk with the Windermere PD on as well. So I'll be more than happy to answer any questions right now. So Mike, go ahead. I'll go ahead and unmute you real quick. My bad. If everybody can stay muted, again, the dialogue will be, yeah, 1 second, just for decorum purposes. The dialogue will be between the resident and staff. What we don't want to occur is people starting to
That's okay.
accuse other people and stuff like that. We've seen in other workshops and other meetings, and I just want to make sure that, again, it's just a public information workshop. We're just trying to gather information and see what we can do to help you guys out. So go ahead, Mike.
Totally respect. Hey, thanks for letting me talk.
Yeah, no worries.
My name is Mike Solkowski. I live at 203 2nd Avenue.
I didn't recognize you, Mike. I'm sorry, man.
That's okay. I'm retired and enjoying life. So there's a couple things that I thought I'd bring to attention. Number one, please, foremost, pay back bond, the federal grant money, 146 grand. We got the money. Pay it back. Let's take the park back. Number two, liability. It's a massive liability. I've got more video and pictures and gathered information. I'm down there every morning with my grandson. Every afternoon we go down there to swim again. So I've got all the information you need, pictures, you name it. So liability, they're doing backflips off the dock. They're carving their names in the dock. They're running jet skis so close to the dock, I'm surprised nobody's been killed yet. Number three, police protection for them having to sit there hours on end to make sure they don't do these things. The minute they pull away, I literally videotape them climb back on the roof. They're smoking marijuana. They're drinking alcohol and liquor by the single shots. So there's a massive liability issue. The biggest problem that I have is at any given time on the weekends or in evenings, we've got this group of individuals that are a problem. And 40, 50 people at a time down there at the park, they can't handle that. So my point is, I've been out there with my grandson in the water, had condoms floating by me. I've been out in the water, had feces floating by us. The kids at the dock think it's a joke. They think it's fun time. They smoke weed. Their profound language to my 7-year-old grandson is unacceptable. I'm begging you, take this park back, please.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
I grew up my entire life in Windermere, and it kills me to see this being destructed and diminished and destroyed. So I'm good. That's what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you, man. And again, this is the purpose of the meetings today and the subsequent meetings that we have is to gather this information. Again, if you have videos, photos, so on and so forth, please make sure that you email it to me and or Tanya. And again, we have the repository that we can utilize to hopefully get some ordinance changes if that is the direction that council wishes to go. And one note that I do want to let you guys know, and I'll have Jason go ahead and type the number in the chat box to make sure that you all have it. Please, if you see something, say something. I know a lot of you are afraid of calling the police or anything like that. You don't need to call 911. You can call the non-emergency line, and that gives us the ability to track the calls as well as make sure that we have notations of what's going on and when. So please make sure you don't text the council members saying, "Hey, listen, I'm seeing this right there, right now."
No.
But
Not to interrupt, but I'm on record with 911, Ocoee and Winter Garden at least 24 times. So I see it, I call them, they come. They're doing a great job. But the garbage and the trash and it just needs to go away. We need to pay it, and whatever we can do, whatever I can do, we'll be a part. Sorry.
Understood, Mike. Yeah, and again, we dispatch through Winter Garden, so they have a system where we can track the calls, and then we have the non-emergency lines that you can contact as well that goes straight to the on-duty officer, and then if they don't answer, then it goes to the supervisor. If they don't answer, then it goes to dispatch. The next person I have listed is Kara. Kara, if you can unmute.
Yep, that's me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I couldn't agree more with everything that Mike just said. We moved here about a year ago, and I do have 3 small kids, and we thought it was just great to live so close to the water. And the same thing, as soon as we get down there, there's nothing but swearing and yelling and just inappropriateness. And it's very disappointing because obviously Windermere is just in my opinion, a small, tight-knit community, and that's what we wanted to be involved in. But when the lake is calm, you can just see all the trash and garbage that's on the bottom of the lake around the dock. There's clothes down there, there's alcohol bottles, there's just tons of stuff. I mean, that place needs like a massive cleanup as well. Sorry, my 2 dogs are wrestling behind me. But you know, we moved here again, and the amount of traffic that we've seen, especially in the summer, has gone up. So we do live right on Lake Street, and you know, even when we're walking, there's kids that are going way above the speed limit. So it does make it very scary as well. But like Mike said, I think the only way to really get the situation under control is to get the dock back and make it private.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. And again, this is being recorded too. And we have all the council members on, as I said before, and as well as a lot of the members of Parks and Recreation Committee. So they're hearing it and taking notes to see what, if any, consensus there is tonight. And if you open up the chat box, you can see that Sergeant Bonk has put in the numbers for you to call if you see something, to go ahead and say something. Next one I have is Joe Brooks. Go ahead, Joe. Joe going once, going twice. All right, we'll come back to you, Joe. I have a Galaxy tab on here as well. I'm asked to unmute. Joe, you on now? All right, Joe. Galaxy tab.
I'm sorry, we're off. Okay, this is James and Peggy and I, Camp 205 East Fifth Avenue.
Hey, good to see you.
I totally agree with every single thing Mike said. There were just a couple things I wanted to add. There have been girls coming, okay, we have the sidewalk right in front of our house, and there are girls that come and stop right in our driveway and take their pants off and put their whatever those bathing suits are called with no bottoms in them, right there in our driveway. And then also, you know, when I first moved, James has been here for I think 30 years, and I first moved here 24 years ago, and we used to be able to go down to the lake with the cooler and, you know, the Kellogg's and the not the Dubois yet, but everybody would gather together. Well, the Irwins, that doesn't happen anymore. We've tried several times. And then the third thing is you were going to give us the non-emergency line, and I'm sorry I didn't get that.
Yeah, it's in the chat box. It's 407-656-3636. Or it's 4007-876-3757. So all you have to do is press 1. And again,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. And good to see you. Yeah, I feel like I'm doing a podcast sometimes when I'm doing these things. All right, Joe, I'm going to ask you to unmute and see if you can get through this time. All right, Joe. If you want, you can put your comments in the chat box, or you can reach out to me after the meeting, and I'll make sure that all of your input gets submitted to Town Council. Denise?
Hi, I'm in agreement with Mike as well. I live 326 East Fifth Avenue, and my mom lives 2 doors down from me. And I get calls from my mom daily because she is afraid. She's 88. She sees police down there all the time. The police are doing a great job, but they don't seem to get any respect from the people that are using the parks. You know, this is a beautiful amenity that our town has, and it has become no fun whatsoever. The noise level, the litter, the vandalizing. I mean, I go down, there's beer bottles floating, vomit on the dock. It's not Windermere. It's become intolerable and very disturbing. And I think, we live closer to the Lake Street property, so it's definitely right in our faces, and we desperately want to buy back the grant. Anything that we can do to do that. I mean, besides being a huge liability and an accident waiting to happen between the jet skis coming too close, eroding the beaches, all the litter in the lakes. Every time I'm down there, I'm fishing out bottles and beer bottles and cigarette butts and just anything and everything, dirty diapers. A couple weeks ago, I had someone beating on my door so they could use my bathroom. Not from around here, and there's no public bathroom. So where do you think they're doing this? Whatever I can do to support buying back the grant, I'm on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. And as indicated in the chat too, I believe that there is a consensus that there is an issue and there's an issue that needs to be resolved in this area. So let's discuss solutions. One of the solutions that I heard from several people that talked tonight was to buy back the grant. Again, that'd be a $130,000 to $140,000 investment. And then, so the intent would to be make these parks resident only. Is that what I'm hearing from the group here? And you can put a thumbs up or.
Yes.
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 Okay. All right. Joan, did you have a comment? Or are you just saying yes?
Joan?
Hey, Joan.
Hey, I'm saying yes. That's a hands up.
All right. And then same with you, Susan?
Yes.
All right, and then 374-307.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to put a yes, but yes from the night.
No problem. No problem. All right. So I'm guessing from everybody that, it is the consensus of the group that is on tonight. Again, some people may be vocal, some people may not be vocal. But the consensus I'm getting is there's an issue, we need to resolve that issue. And one of the things that we need to look at is to potentially buy back the FERDAP grants, as well as look at the possibility of making these a resident only park as opposed to a public park. I believe that Amy Dubois wanted to speak. Amy, you still on?
Hey, yes, George and I are here together. Yeah.
Ooh.
So, yeah, I'm in agreement with everybody so far that we need a solution. And I know the tennis courts are private, but I know that the town built those. They didn't have any FERDAP funds for that. So I don't think anybody is feeling sorry or feeling bad that tennis courts are private. In fact, I'm sure that there are many residents or non-residents that would like to go to play tennis, and they go, and then the word is out, and they go, no, it's private. We'll just go over to Lake Cane. There's plenty of tennis courts over there. So I think the same would happen here in Windermere if we made it private and we put some kind of gate or something up there. They'd be like, no, Windermere's private. Let's just go over here. Let's go to Turkey Lake Park, or let's find someplace. So I think once word gets out that it's private, it's all going to settle back down. And I don't think anybody's going to care that it's residents only. They'll just go someplace else. So I think it'll be fine once we decide to pay it back and make it private. So that's my thought.
Thank you.
I do have one question for you.
Sure.
Have you pulled all the police reports? Because
We
that's
have not.
one thing you can do is let's just pull the police reports and how many times have they been down there over the last 2 years, and how many how many calls they get, because we call quite a bit also. And what do those police reports say? That will give you, the town council, a good idea of, what's happening down there and what they're having to address every time they walk down, every time they get called.
Yeah, we do have Sergeant Bonk on, and we can provide that data to the residents again. Most of the time that we were out there, it's mostly just proactive from the police officers themselves, as opposed to reactive. I know we had an incident out there, I would say not last weekend, but the weekend before, to where we had to trespass some individuals. But you're seeing exactly what they're seeing, the alcohol use, the drug use. And I know some of the adjacent property owners are getting some of the vape pens, some of the beer cans thrown into their bushes. And again, we had the similar situation over at Fernwood Park, and some of the amendments that we made over there has curtailed some of those issues. And I do believe it's going to work over there. And that's something that we can explore for this area too, because again, I see the Willards are on, they can give you firsthand accounts of what happens over at their property, over at the Fernwood issue. Anybody else want to speak? Rick, I know that you're on.
Hey, Robert, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm together here with Tracy.
Hey.
Hi. Hi.
All right, so I'm a recovering litigator. I was with Gray Robinson for 22 years and actually handled this lawsuit. And Robert referred to the settlement agreement, which is actually a consent final judgment rendered by the court. So I have an idea, a potential solution on how we can deal with that consent final judgment. But I believe, because even though it's a former client, there are some privileges that still attach. So Robert, with your permission, I'd like to share those with the town attorney, Heather Ramos, and you, but we can talk through them. But I think this is something we can solve. And I want to volunteer my time to help try and solve it.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate that. And yeah, definitely. You and I and Heather have worked really well in the past, and look forward to continuing that relationship. So anything we can do to work on those settlement agreements and or move to wherever the consensus may be or the direction of council may be, we'd be more than happy to utilize your expertise. So
I just want to guarantee that Bill's going to pay my invoices.
It depends on what
me.
You'll have to speak to my attorney, my in-house attorney, about that.
Fair enough.
So, all right. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Tracy. Ms. Ford. Just so you know that
Thank you.
in the last year, we've had 131 calls.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Robert. Did you call on me?
Yes, ma'am.
I think there's no question that everybody here wants the same thing, that this remain a Windermere Park, as it was instated in 1912, that the Lake Street Park was part of the town of Windermere. I would question the whole issue about the swim area establishment. Do we not have riparian rights that extend out into the lake? And do we really need to answer to another body?
Yes. And well, first, your question is, we don't have the authority, and yes, we would have to. Our jurisdiction ends at the normal high water elevation. So anything that's within the water, we have to utilize FWC and OCSO.
Okay.
And they're delegated that authority to the state of Florida.
Then whatever those efforts are, I think definitely as part of our effort to take the lake back, not only with paying the grant money back, but establishing a quote unquote swim area, as we did when we found out that all that park area did belong to the town of Windermere, that was hidden for many years from some previous establishments. Nobody knew that from 3rd to 5th was town property and open access to the residents. And when we found it, and when we took it back and started to maintain it, it was the next best thing to having our own private boat dock. So if we need to go through some legislation to establish a swim area, I think that would only help in our plight to make this a private park. Other than that, and the fact that for some reason, there appears to be no maintenance going on our park property from 4th and the restricted parking that has all of a sudden showed up. And the knee-high weeds on 4th of July weekend and the lake shore not accessible until you get down to Lake Park. Just all of that together.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you so much for your input, and we do have Public Works Director on as well, so she'll take a look at making sure that we get that maintained. We have lakes consultants, we have stormwater management team, and we also have Dobsons that do a lot of our maintenance out there, so we'll make sure that we get that taken care of. I know Bob McKinley's on. Bob, did you want to speak?
Thanks, Robert.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Robert. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Number one, to establish the swim area, my understanding would also require that we monitor water quality and all of this. There's nothing right now that would prohibit someone from swimming in the lake. We are concerned with the park. One of the problems they have at Lake Street Park is the jet skis that come in there and zoom in and out. I'd like to make the recommendation that the county consider closing the lake down ramp except for emergency vehicles. During COVID, when that park was closed, that ramp was closed, a lot of our problems went away. And they could maintain it as they did then and use it for fire rescue, police, game warden, and that would solve a lot of our jet ski problem that we're having. And the boating coming up in there where the kids would be playing, because we can't control the water. So even if we make the park private, what they do in the water is beyond our control.
So your suggestion would be to either limit access to the county at the lake down boat ramp, and or there's a possibility the town could possibly annex that in and then make that private.
Right.
I'm not sure how the county's going to go with that, but we could always have the discussion with Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And that's something we're gonna have to look at too, as far as, again, we have jurisdiction up to the normal high water elevation, and we would have to work with those other jurisdictions on enforcement and establishing those other areas of protections to make sure that, we're not only, reducing some of the misbehavior that's out there, but also, protecting, our lakes for water quality, as well as the lakefronts, and not restricting access to the people that currently have boathouses, or the ability for people that currently don't have one that can construct one. So we'll make sure that we take a look at that.
Right. Thank you.
No problem. Is that Jim or Carol on for the Willards? Jim or Carol, you want to jump in? If not, I'll start going to the chat box. Yeah, Carol, we have seen people coming in through the vanful to the parks. Again, right now they're designated public parks, so we can't really restrict that access. But from what I'm hearing tonight, and will be discussed at not only the July 13th probably, but the July 14th Parks and Rec workshop, as well as the Town Council workshop on the 26th, and possibly subsequently at the August Town Council meeting. private's the only way to go. Do we have the budget for it? No, we don't. This is something that we would have to probably pull from reserves. But you know, we have about 1.9 million in reserves right now. We're probably going to pull about 500,000 out for the various projects for next fiscal year. But if this is an initiative that the town is willing to go ahead and support, I don't see that that would be an issue from a budgetary standpoint. We can control the water if we reinstate the swim area. I think we discussed that. Oops, sorry about that. Can we do a no wake zone around it? Yes, that's something that we would look at too, would be establishing a swim area as well as a no motorized watercraft area. And then we have to take a look at, again, the possibility of creating a no wake zone. There are certain thresholds that you have to meet in order to get those things approved. And again, that's where the data collection comes in. You know, safety, there's been a couple deaths out there, you know, especially with the rentals, people not having life jackets. So there is a possibility that we can utilize those accidents, incidents, or close calls to get that no wake zone implemented. Yes, we have signage, however, not enough enforcement. Again, you know, typically on a weekend, we have 2 to 3 officers on duty. They can get pulled in various directions. The same thing is going to be with FWC and OCSO if and when we're able to get some of these swim areas established. It's more of a deterrent than and adds another tool for law enforcement to hopefully prevent some of the behaviors and or put, I hate to say it, but move it somewhere else. Yeah, again, as far as putting up buoys, ropes, anything in the water, we do not have the jurisdiction. We'd have to get Orange County PD, FWC, OCSO, and the state of Florida to approve that. Parks, can we discuss 4th Street access, please? Yeah, so just to condense and consolidate some of the stuff that we've already talked about. Number one, I believe that everybody is in favor of buying back the FERDAP grant. Number two, the staff will explore how much and logistics behind making these parks resident only. I hate to say private, but resident only. And we can have that information gathered and presented at the July 13th workshop and also the July 14th and 26th workshops. But now we can talk about parking. I know some of the things that some people have stated too is that you block the parking access points, then you kind of derail some of the issues at some of those locations. Currently, we have a moratorium on parking at some of these locations. You can drop off if you have a kayak, if you just want to drop off the kids or anything like that. But there has been discussion as far as limiting parking at these locations and making them park at Central Park or other areas. What that does is actually, with Fernwood as an example, we had to create no parking on weekends all the way down Butler and 7th Avenue. So, you know, it's how much pain you want to put on yourselves in order to resolve a problem that is not, it is actually originating outside of your jurisdiction. Some people have said, you know, limit the number of spots and then also just create maybe a possibility of just having golf cart parking at some of those locations. Not everybody has a golf cart, but it would allow just people, residents to have access to parking at those locations. And at some of these areas, they are the driveways for the residents that live at those areas. So that's something I'd be more happy to discuss. I'm not sure who had that in the comment section, but what are your thoughts on parking at some of these areas?
Robert, I have a comment about the parking, specifically at 4th and Magnolia. You mentioned that is essentially the driveway for those 4 homes that are there. And I think by not having parking there, it eliminates a risk and a potential danger to our police department, our officers. You know, when they roll up there in the middle of the night, there's cars parked there. You know, that adds a level of danger and uncertainty that we wouldn't have to deal with if there was no parking there. It also blocks the view of the dock and what's happening at the lake. So I would prefer that we personally, continue to not have parking at that location. We don't have it at Lake Street Park. The parking at Fifth and Oakdale Street, Central Park rather, is only a block away. And so anyway, that's just my input on that particular factor.
With the consensus that's here, again, this is just a public input, is everybody on the same page as far as eliminating all cars, or maybe just golf carts, or just, pushing everything over to areas further away? I see Bonnie has her hand up. Bonnie, did you have any state or comment, question? Bonnie?
Oh, there we go. No, I was just raising my hand in agreement. I think that Bill has an excellent point. I think that they're on Fourth, that could be a real trap hazard for a police officer, especially one that's working alone, if he goes down that and can't get back out again. So I think that's a great point. I'd never even considered that. But no, I think everyone is saying what we all believe, and that is, please, we just want our parks back. I live directly across the street from that dock. Been here for 40 years in this house, and it's see what has happened, and that we're allowing these kids to control us, and they're intimidating. I went down last night because my husband and I were trying to enjoy dinner on our porch, and the language was getting worse and worse. And I finally had enough of it. And I walked down and asked them to please watch their vocabulary. And the girls all laughed at me, and the boys at least said, "We're sorry." But the girls just snickered at the old lady that came down to ask such a request. So, I don't recognize any of the kids. They are not locals. At least when I am down there, I don't see locals. I asked one girl if she was from here in town, and she said, "Oh, yes." And then as the conversation progressed, she said she lived in downtown Orlando. That was her downtown that she lived in. It wasn't Windermere, it was downtown Orlando. It's really sad. Now, I love numbers because it certainly has cleaned up the water quality. We have a beautiful white sandy beach down there, and I think we can attribute to the activity. But other than that, I don't see any good that has come from the numbers to congregate down there. That's my comments.
Thank you, Bonnie. And I see a comment from Nora Brophy. Resident parking only is very, very difficult. How do we enforce that from a law enforcement perspective? Then you're getting into the same situation that we were talking about on Butler and 7th, meaning that do you passing, do you do stickers, annual stickers, and we just don't have the resources to do anything like that. If you're within a confined area, like you have at Fernwood Park, because it is a boat ramp now, only those that have a boat pass are allowed to park in there. But this is something that you're looking at 1,600 parcels. And then how many cars are you looking at town-wide in order to accommodate that? So that's just a logistical nightmare and probably an enforcement nightmare. But I do see people, a lot of people are in favor of the golf carts. And also have some more comments. And again, these comments are recorded, so we're able to utilize those as we create a plan that we can present to the residents on the 13th, and also Parks and Recreation on the 14th and the 26th. Yeah, unfortunately, oops, sorry about that. There's a levee struck next to me. But anyway, so to get a feel for, or to reiterate exactly what we're talking about tonight. There's a lot of issues, there's documented issues. So what staff will do, either, well, this will be prior to the 26th meeting, because the 13th is less than a week away. We'll try to formulate a plan for paying back the FERDAP grant. We'll talk to the representatives from the state to see how much and if there's any possibility of forgiveness of that grant. Second of which, we'll look at the possibility of, privatizing, not privatizing, but making it a resident-only park. What would that entail? And then we will work with FWC, OCSO, Orange County on the lake section of this area, meaning, swim area, no wake zone, no motorized watercraft exclusion zones, and talking about the lake down boat ramp. And then we'll come up with some options as far as the parking for the access points. Does that pretty much summarize what we've all talked about tonight? How much does Parks and Recreation currently have in their reserves? It's hard to say. I would say maybe around 60,000, but that money is for amenities to be added. They've worked really hard with Pet Fest. They've worked really hard with, Run on the Lakes to make that money for them to utilize for enhancements, meaning, they use it for helping out with the tennis courts. They use it for, they just use it for the Windermere Recreation Center, adding a playground area. So they're looking at to add amenities and not take away from their coffers to fund this. This would probably be funded through the town itself and not through Parks and Recreation. As far as anybody's creating a separate working group or anything like that, that's fine. As far as the town itself, we have to post everything and make sure everything is above board with public records and or sunshine laws and notifications. So with what I've said, as far as a condensed version of the hour plus that we've been discussing tonight, is there anything else anybody would like to say relative to this subject, or let staff get to work?
Can I speak?
Yeah, absolutely.
My name's Ben Camp at 205 East Fifth Avenue. Does the town currently have funds to pay off, the federal government for these grants?
It would be the state government, and we would have to probably dip into our reserves.
Okay, so you don't. So you need to ask us for funds to take care of the grants?
No, we would not ask. I'm speaking as a staff standpoint. I would not ask the residents to put any additional monies up. We would look at the money that we have in our reserves or revenues that we have to cover that cost.
So does it have to be like a referendum that we vote for and say, go ahead?
No. The only thing that would be public hearings, not a referendum, but a vote by council, would be to, number one, pay for the reimbursement of the funds, and to change the comp plan and zoning, and to make it a resident-only park.
So how do we set that in motion?
It's in motion right now with these public input meetings, and then having Parks and Recreation make a recommendation to town council, then having a town council workshop, and then having a town council meeting, a formal town council meeting that's noticed for them to give me direction on which way they would like to proceed.
From what I've seen from the meeting, I think everybody wants to do that. So if we can help you, please let us know.
Appreciate that. And sometimes, again, people, when they're for something, a lot of times they don't show up to meetings, and when they're against something, they show up. So we've seen it with certain actions that have been taken by town council. I do want to caution, some people may be have a different viewpoint. People that are in different areas when it comes to parking and stuff like that. If you're, in the Willows, Manors, Marina Bay, so they may have some disagreements relative to this, and they'll, be coming in later on. But, we do want to make sure that we include the entire community, make sure that everybody's having the kind of enjoyment and quality of life that we expect in this area. But the more feedback we get, one direction as opposed to another is always welcomed.
Okay, well, what I've gotten out of this meeting is the residents would like to move forward with it, so.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Hey, Robert.
Yes, sir.
Bob McKinley again. Reference the parking on 4th Avenue there at the end. Parks and Rec went through a period of time and we installed with Public Works, I believe, 3 parking spaces at the end of that street. What I have seen is the problem in walking down there, looking around, was that people were parking back up along the street, including the residents, in between the trees, and it kind of blocked everything. What I'd like to see is those parking spaces at the very end be reserved for golf carts. If it's a golf cart, it's probably a resident that is going in there. And just make that entire street, other than the golf cart parking at the end, as a no parking zone, because I know that residents still park out there at night and they have driveways they can park in. I can't park in the street in front of my house, neither can they.
Appreciate that, Bob. And we have added additional no parking signage and had a moratorium as far as the parking over there. And we will, again, create a plan. Hopefully that will get consensus from not only the residents, but also town council. And as I said before, as far as, the town's reserves, we have about 1.9. You want to be in the sweet spot between 20 and I would say 25% savings as far as your reserves. And we're well over that. But, with the charter restrictions that we have, we have to save money before we're able to spend it on some of these projects. And that $500,000 that we have allocated for next year are grants that we're working on. They're 75 grants, meaning that the state or federal government is paying 75% of these projects, and we're paying 25%. So with that 500,000+ that we're paying, we're getting about $5 million worth of value for it. And that's Butler Basin, Bessie Basin, West 2nd Avenue, and phase 1 of the multimodal Ward Trail and pedestrian bridge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, and again, we're going to agree on some things and disagree on some things, and that's what this whole process is about, relative to golf carts and parking. And we can hash that out through the subsequent workshops. But I think staff has some good direction, and we're going to be more than happy to research them and then coordinate with the other jurisdictions that are going to be involved in this as well, to see if they have any objections or what other concerns that they may have. Mike, you have a question?
What's that? Robert, you there?
Yeah, I saw you put a question mark.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there any possible way that we can put other projects on hold, such as the cart path and others, until we get this problem resolved?
No, I have, the reason for that is I have a federal earmark for the golf cart path, which is $760,000. So our share is about 150 for that. And I don't want to lose 760,000. And then for the HMGP grants, the Butler, Bessie, and West 2nd Avenue projects, that's about $3.3 million right there.
Yeah, I don't want to
We have time constraints
progress.
on those.
Yeah,
also.
we and then also with the ARPA funds, the American Recovery Act dollars, which is about $1.7 million, I have to spend that within 3 years. So all those projects are they're time restricted, and we have to make sure that we spend those dollars sooner than later. So yeah, those are already committed. But with 130, 140, I believe that the town coffers can absorb that type of hit if that is the direction that council would like to move forward in.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else?
Robert, I just want to say thank you for the attention to this matter and your work on the PowerPoint, and also to the residents for joining in. We've got 35 participants earlier, and look forward to seeing everyone on the next workshop as well. So spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, guys. Good seeing you again.
You too.
Come here.
All righty. If there's nothing added, hopefully I'll see some of you on the 13th. On Monday, this is how my next week's going to be. So my wife's going to love me. On July 11th, I believe we have the Ward Trail 90% plans to be presented to the public. On July 12th, we have the town council meeting. July 13th, of course, we have this next round of the Lake Street Public Park public input. And then on the 14th, we have Parks and Recreation. And then the next meeting after that will be on the 26th. So thank you all for joining again. It's if your neighbors, friends, or anybody were unable to attend tonight, they have several other bites at the apple. In addition to that, this is recorded, and you can send them the link, or they can go to the town's web YouTube channel and view this once it's posted. So again, thank you all for participating tonight. I hope you have a great weekend. Stay dry, because it sounds like it's going to rain tonight.
It'll be good.
It's pouring here.
Yeah, it's coming towards me. So yeah.
Please don't say that. Don't tell me that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's bright and
It's
sunny.
been raining for the past 20 minutes, just so you know.
Okay. Well, I didn't open. Oh yeah, now I see it's raining. But again, thank you all for participating. Again, you're taking time from your busy lives and your family to be part of this call. It means that you're investing in the community, you're investing in this issue. So I thank you very much, and I look forward to a productive discussion as this moves forward.
Thank you.
Yes, you all have my email address and my cell phone number, I believe. If not, you can go to the website and get it, and just make sure you send any of your comments to me, and I'll be making sure that I forward them over to town council. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Diane. I see Hannah's on too, or was on. So hey, Hannah.
Say, thanks, Robert.
Hannah says, thanks, Robert.
I will have to get a better picture someday.